We're joined now by the editor-in-chief of the Fourth Period, NHL Insider, and the host of DFO Insiders Wednesdays with our buddy Irf Gaffar. It's Mr. David Pagnotta here, back with Sekerson Price. How are you?
Good, boys. How's it going?
Good. Very well. Welcome back to Pacific time, David. We know you split your time a little bit between Toronto and LA, so good to have you back here on the Best Coast. Let's start with Quinn Hughes. Look, there's a lot of chatter out there, but the important stuff is there a lot of chatter with the Vancouver Canucks front office on Quinn Hughes? What can you tell us there?
Yeah, I know there's certainly been a lot in the last few days, especially things picking up. A lot of people trying to tie, what teams may have interest, what teams to look out for, and rightfully so, because there are teams like Detroit's been brought up and as a possibility. But I think that's, for the most part right now anyway, all that is. A lot of teams are internalizing some of their planning for later on in the season and what to do in the off season. A lot of teams that feel, now is a time to pounce, or are we better served to do something a little bit later on? And I think with Quinn Hughes, a lot of teams are starting to map out some of their game plans. Like, for example, I'm in LA right now. Half of Seattle was here. They're having their internal meetings right now, just around the 30% mark of the season, with their scouts and everybody. A lot of teams are starting to do that. But it's to map out the rest of this season and plan a little bit further ahead. And I think with the Canucks, yes, there are teams that would love to pry Quinn Hughes. Obviously, there's 31 other teams. But I think it's still premature to suggest anything is getting serious. If anything, teams are just saying, hey, you there yet? No? All right. Well, just keep this in mind when you get there, or if you get there. So I just want to kind of temper those expectations, or, some of the chatter surrounding Quinn Hughes. He controls everything, really. Him and his camp basically control his situation, his future. You talk to some people, he loves it. He wants to stay. Yeah, he's pissed off. He'd love for this to be a better scenario, a better situation, but he wants to grind this out and he's committed. And you hear others that are saying, well, maybe he would consider his options elsewhere, and maybe that's what's best for him, what's best for the organization. It depends on who you...
Yeah, the body language has not been in his favor in terms of quelling these rumors, obviously, because there has been moments, and as we heard from our own Frank Corrado yesterday, that could just be fatigue too. Like, they're playing him 31 minutes a night these days. It may not be that he's dogging it; he might be dog tired.
Exactly.
But that again, temperamental a little bit as well. That can be isolated to just, this sucks to lose right now, rather than I want out, you think?
Yeah, I think right now it's more that. You get frustrated, right? Like, it's a combination of not winning, so constantly losing, and hearing all the chatter. Like, he does a great job of blocking things out. He really does. So when, he says it's real. He doesn't get bothered too much by it, but when you hear it over and over again, and you're not piling up the W's, and you're falling further down the standings, it does, the frustration does boil over, and you start to see that a little bit on the ice. But as far as I know, I'm sure there are teams that continue to just feel out the situation, but I don't get the sense that the Canucks are in any position right now, or any willingness, I should say, to entertain anything serious involving the captain at this point.
Yeah, you say he controls his future, which is absolutely true. If he gets to free agency a year from, after next season, or even this summer when he has the ability to re-sign with whichever team he's playing for at the time. So that much is true. Until then, he has no trade protection, David. So, go ahead.
Interesting note on that. I was going to bring that up. Next season is technically a UFA year for him. I don't have it fully confirmed, but some people have suggested to me that he may have some type of no trade protection in that final year of the contract. I've tried to confirm it on both sides, and nobody's willing to confirm or deny it. So it leads me to believe there might be something there. Remember, they don't have to be fully reported. They don't have to be public.
That's right.
So they may just be keeping this close to the vest. And because maybe both sides know nothing's going to happen this season, it's a moot point to bring up anything related to him. But I'm led to believe there's some type of protection there that controls part of the narrative, at least in that last season.
And for our viewers' edification, that is often the case. When you buy UFA years, there's often a little bit of give on that in the UFA years, correct?
Yeah. There. So I don't know if it's a full no trade, a full no move, if it's a partial, if it's fully there in general. But again, I reached out to both sides, his camp and someone with the Canucks as well, and neither side was willing to tell me one way or another if there's something really in there. So interesting note.
Okay. Yeah, no, very interesting note. But tell me this. Do you believe that the Canucks are going to try and have this conversation about are you willing to re-sign and mobilize this file by the deadline? Because Hughes can play out the season. There's been reporting that his camp just wants to play out the season, deal with this in the summer. Rutherford and Alvin have treated the deadline as a deadline on other files with Elias Pettersson a couple of years ago in his contract extension. Do you know whether the Canucks are going to push for their answer at the deadline, by the deadline?
I mean, look, I think they would love to know definitively if he's thinking of staying long term, and at least getting a notion in February and beginning of March versus finding out in June or July or August. I think they'd like to, but I don't think there's a definitive deadline on it either. I think the preference is give us a little bit of comfort in some type of answer so we can plan things out properly. But I believe those lines of communication, for the most part, have been pretty open between Pat Brisson and the guys at CAA and the Canucks management brass. So I think they'd love more clarity, but it doesn't seem to me like there's over concern that they may not get some type of answer by that period. Again, I'd be surprised, not shocked, but surprised if something were to happen in season by the deadline in general. So, I don't think, unless Quinn Hughes tells them, and maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, everybody's keeping a lid on it, but maybe unless at that point him and his camp say, don't worry about it, we'll finalize the deal in June, sign it July 1 or whatnot. My plan is to stay here long term. If that message has been brought across, it makes things obviously a lot easier. But I don't think the Canucks are aggressively trying to find that definitive answer at this point or later on closer to the deadline on March 6th.
Let's broaden the scope a little bit here. The next potential pressure point for anybody's trading is the roster freeze at Christmas, which is all of a sudden now on the menu a little bit.
We saw that as last year.
Yeah, two weeks away here. This would be more for Kiefer Sherwood or somebody else, but do you think that is a pressure point for the Canucks to make a move, more so than maybe the acquiring team? But you tell me, what does Christmas mean for any of these deals?
Yeah, I don't think, guys, I don't think there's like a pressure cooker situation where there's a quasi deadline or mock deadline or anything along those lines. I think they would have liked to get at least one bit of business done over this last week to 10 days by just kind of getting the first domino to fall with who they want to move out. But there's a lot of interest and in Kiefer Sherwood specifically, and I think that's why there's a little bit of a pause in the urgency to move. Now, I should say there was no urgency. There is no urgency. They don't want to panic and just say, all right, we just want to make a move because we told everybody, it leaked out that we're willing to listen on these guys. I think the urgency is trying to just find out, okay, we're going to move out players X, Y, and Z. Here's how we can fill them. We want to start our plan here to regroup for next season. And because of the amount of interest that has been shown in Kiefer Sherwood from, several teams, Montreal, Boston, Minnesota, Dallas, I believe Tampa, Columbus, and so on. And again, a lot of teams are we mentioned this, and I'm sure you guys talk about this a lot. The fact that $1.5 million cap hit is there makes it very, very valuable to a ton of teams. I think the Canucks are going to wait this out to see if they can get their price. Can you give me a first-round pick and a little bit extra sprinkled on top for Kiefer Sherwood? And by first-round pick, keep in mind, this is going to be high 20s and 30, 31, 32, like in that range, what that pick is going to be. But can you get a first-round pick and a little bit extra for a guy like Sherwood. And whatever team is willing to do that might kind of win that race right now. So they're they're obviously still open. They're listening on a number of guys, but they're taking an approach of, you come to us now. You know what we want. If you're willing to pay it, let's talk. Let's finalize it.
Do you know, David, whether the Canucks would grant permission to other teams to talk to his agent on an extension as a UFA to be, or do you think that they'll just on their own sort of get an understanding of what the parameters would be if they're looking to acquire Sherwood and extend him?
Yeah, I haven't gotten that sense that the Canucks are willing to do that, to give teams permission to speak with his agent. But I do believe the notion out there is that, assuming he keeps this up, continues to be top 3 in hits, can put up, 25, 30 goals on the season, or somewhere in that vicinity, you're probably looking at, well, it will be 5+. And I think 5 times 5, perhaps a little more, is a good indicator of what he's going to get. And I think a lot of people around the league understand that that's likely the price tag for him on a new deal. But I don't believe they've given other teams permission to speak with his agent, Judd Moldaver, who also represents Garland. So I don't think that's part of the equation right now. Now, maybe a team convinces the Canucks to say, hey, we'll give you what you're looking for and some if we can get him on an extension. Would that tickle you a little bit and convince you to give us permission to make that happen? That could be something a little bit later on, but as of now, I don't think that's entered the equation.
Just one last question on Sherwood. You mentioned a first-round pick and a sweetener, and that very much makes sense as a concoction. We do know the Canucks would prefer a younger player, something that's a little more ready to plop into the roster. Do you think that could materialize for them?
I think that's a possibility as well, and as we all know, they've relayed that message. Now, I mentioned first round, or equivalent value. So if there's a prospect or a guy that's right there that kind of fits that same value, that's what the Canucks are open to, obviously. So yes, that would be part of it. But the on paper price tag is, first round pick plus, or equivalent plus. So, and I don't think, I know they'd love to address the dot, and they would love to bring in somebody capable of playing that center position, especially at the 2C role. I don't think it's, at least not for Sherwood or any of their pending UFAs, that they're putting a stamp on what type of position player they're looking for.
And no chance this gets expanded into a bigger trade, like Kiefer Sherwood and something else. That starts to get a little bit more doable for a younger center, doesn't it?
It makes it more palatable. Yeah. And I think at the same time, going back to what we talked about, with respect to an extension, if that's part of the mix, then it makes it makes teams a lot more comfortable to give up an asset, a young piece that they value at that position. So yes, there can be a lot of creativity that comes in here, and teams may look to address multiple pieces. We want Sherwood, we want Drew O'Connor, because we've got a hole in our bottom 6, and he's controllable with another year on his contract. So there are certainly ways of getting creative. And I think that's what, from a creative perspective, that's why, the Canucks are willing to listen on Connor Garland. They don't want to move him per se, but if there's a creative way of bolstering their roster in some fashion, they would certainly be open to moving him. So I think they're open to a variety of different scenarios here and possibilities. But you're right. If it gets to a point where we're talking Sherwood plus, it does amplify the overall return of what it's going to be. And
these young defensemen,
they may check that box.
The Mancinis, the DPDs of the world. If you throw that into a deal,
most of the players, at least the age group that they're looking to keep. And when David says first round equivalent, good example from last year. It involved a few other pieces, but Colorado wanted Brock Nelson from the Islanders, and it turned out to be the centerpiece was Callum Ritchie. It was a first-round pick the previous year and is now actually played some games for the Islanders. So I think those sorts of concoctions are something to look at.
Great comparison.
Thank you, David. Lastly, from me, unless, did you want to ask him about Kane? There's not a big market for Evander Kane, is there?
Any noise at all there?
Yeah.
No, I haven't gotten that sense. I'd be a little bit surprised if anything were to happen now. I think if Kane is moved, it's probably close to the deadline. That's the one. Like, I think there's a willingness for other teams to look at some of their other pieces and make moves now. I think Evander Kane, I haven't heard too much on that front. If it does happen, I would anticipate that being something more realistic to occur closer to the March 6th deadline.
Well, price and production not in his favor.
No. Right. And lastly, right. David, we talked last week about sellers. It's a seller's market. There are very few teams that consider themselves out of it this early in the season. Boy, quite a week in St. Louis where they realize or they find out that their rookie sensation, the scoring winger Jimmy Snuggerud, is off for wrist surgery, and Alexei Toropchenko burns in a household accident. He's out of the lineup as well. Does this accelerate the selling timeline for Doug Armstrong and the Blues?
I don't know about accelerating, but it just kind of puts a stamp on where they're at this season. And I think the hockey gods are telling them, you got to kind of, this is the direction you're going in. This is not your year. And, we all know who's available. I think pretty much like the Blues and Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen are willing to listen on almost anybody. I think other than Thomas, I don't know if there's another piece that, well, obviously Snuggerud, excuse me, let me clarify that. Yeah. Holloway, I don't see them being in a position to move and whatnot, but some of the other pieces, some of the veteran pieces on this team, they're still available, whether it's Falk or Shen, in terms of guys that are upper tier in terms of veteranship. I still think they would definitely listen and will continue to listen on Jordan Kyrou. And I think they're going to get creative in some other areas. I know there's a little bit of health concern as well from Pia Suter. So they made a call up the other day, Matt Luff joining the club from Springfield as a little added security, because I think there are some other injury concerns that they may have of guys that may not play this weekend. So they're kind of just hedging themselves a little bit, but they're getting depleted. And I think, again, this is just reinforces their position in terms of being an actual seller this season and willing to listen on other guys. I think they'll listen on guys like Bushnevich and others too that have a little bit of no trade protection.
Wow, yeah, there are some attractive pieces in St. Louis. The good news for the Canucks is it's not a race. There's plenty of buyers out there, right?
Yes, yeah.
You'll be able to sell your players even if St. Louis is selling theirs.
Yeah, and we're going to keep hearing the Blues. We'll keep hearing, the Predators. We'll hear more of the Flames. I think they're another team that just needs to accept the fate that they've been dished out this season. I think Buffalo's entering that equation out in the East. So I know it's not good there. They've got to fix a whole bunch of stuff, but you're starting to see slowly the gap starting to widen at certain points in the standings. Yeah. And the ones in the bottom are starting to realize that, okay, we've got to clean a few things up here. And I guess this is where we're going this year.
White flags are moving up the flagpole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're at half mast if they're not
moving up. Yes.
Marvelous stuff, David. Thank you for this. We will catch up next Thursday, my friend.
Can't wait, guys. See ya.